Hey, pay attention. This is Joe Stump, and this is KoreaGuitar.com.
How are you doing?
Good, man. No, always good. Being Joe Stump, as I tell everybody, being Joe Stump's a good deal, so I can't complain.
Hey, that is the perfect thing to say, the perfect thing to hear. That's awesome. That's awesome. And things are going well. So,
Yeah, yeah, things are going well. My last solo record, The Dark Lord Rises. It's very gratifying to make like what a lot of people call my best record, ever. It's after like 20 years of making records. Or 23 to be exact, or even longer. It's great to make your best effort, at that stage in your career. So that's very gratifying.
that's a great album too. I was just listening to that this morning.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, no, I'm, like I'm always at it. So trying to get better. Trying to get, always trying to improve and stuff. So it's nice when it all comes together. And that record, I'm extremely pleased with it across the board as far as like the tracks and the playing and the tones and and so like it's nice to when it happens like that.
Well, you should be proud of everything you do, but this new one, I just love it. I mean, I am not a shredder. I can't shred to save my life, but I love listening to it, and it just blows my mind what you guys are doing these days. It blows my mind. I
Oh
don't
no,
understand it.
yeah, well, I like to like all the fancy guitar stuff and like the insanely fast playing and the very technical aspects are cool, but it's got to be showcased in music that that isn't boring, that people will enjoy listening to, with riffs and melodic ideas and and like some balls and some like some rock element to it as well. It's not all that fancy stuff just gets kind of old fast if that's all it is.
Sure. When did you start playing guitar?
I played a little when I was like 10, and then I was like, and then I was taking like lessons from, some old guy. My mother would drive me to the music store, like reading out of like some book, like Mel Bay's Easy Way to Guitar, and I was like, this blows, you know what I mean? This isn't for me, and so I stopped. And then I took it back up when I was like 13, and then immediately started playing, like rock and hard rock and stuff, and then it just kind of went, it just kind of went from there.
Who influenced you when you were young? Like, I still remember the exact moment I decided to pick up a guitar. It was when I heard the guitar solo from Ice Cream Man on Van Halen 1.
Nice. That's a great track to be exposed to guitar music from. You know what I mean? And especially the first band. Yeah, it was the 70s especially were like a great era of guitar. So when I was young, it was I liked the hard rock of the day of Blackmore and Deep Purple, Michael Schenker when he was with the UFO, Hendrix, so stuff like that, and and those types of things. And of course, there were other great like 70s iconic guitar players like Tommy Bolin and Rory Gallagher and Robin Trower and guys like that, and Sabbath. So that was it when I was very young. And then towards the end of when I was in high school, I discovered Al Di Meola, and then I was instantly hooked. And I always loved guys that played fast, because Schenker and Blackmore, and the early Scorpion stuff with Uli John Roth, that was like some serious fast guitar. Or it is, there's still plenty of serious fast guitar on those records, despite the era. And so then I heard Elegant Gypsy, and you never heard anybody play fast like that. I got really into Al and stuff.
And then I'm guessing the whole I don't like labels, but neoclassical metal came out with Yngwie and guys like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, I'll give you like what happened with me is I loved all the dark sounding European guys, like this is pre Yngwie. So pre Yngwie, I love and these guys are still my core guys, like so you had Blackmore and Schenker and Uli John Roth and Gary Moore. Like I was in the I'm talking like 1981, 82, before Yngwie. This is all pre Yngwie or whatever. I wore out those early Gary Moore records when he was a metal player. So along with all the Rainbow stuff.
Corridors of Power. Is that what that album was called?
That was one of them. Yeah, the two big ones, for the studio records, Corridors of Power and Victims of the Future. And then the live album is We Want More, which is, like an iconic, like great guitar record.
Right. I remember listening to Corridors of Power. My brother used to have it. And oh man, I think one of my all-time favorite solos is from that. He did a cover of Shapes of Things.
Shapes is on Victims of the Future. That is the
okay.
But you were close, man. Yeah, Shapes is on Victims, and Victims of the Future is the record just after Corridors of Power.
Okay, so I just had the album wrong, but that solo on Shapes of Things, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like when I would like go to the that's like back in the day. I would go to the record store like the day the record came out, and then I would immediately obsessively learn every one of those solos. Like on Victims and Corridors of Power, I might have known at one time knew every single solo on the record.
Wow.
In fact, what's funny is like talking about Yngwie. One of the reasons, like Jeff Glicksman, the guy that produced Victims of the Future, he produced Yngwie's record, Odyssey record, the one he did with Joe Turner. And
Right.
One of the reasons he did was because Yngwie heard the guitar sound on the early Gary Moore records, and he's like, I got to get this guy.
Wow, interesting. 6 degrees of separation. It always happens in rock and roll.
Yeah,
Everybody knows everybody or needs somebody. But you were talking about, it's funny. I was just talking to someone else this morning. He's a guy who wrote a book about Van Halen called Van Halen Rising. I don't know if you've read that book, but it's fantastic. But we had a nice conversation today about records. And it's funny that you just mentioned that back in the day, you would look forward to that release date and going to the store and, combing over the credits and the lyrics and all that stuff. It's gone. Those days are gone.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like, I mean, that's one thing. Like, it's nice that things are so accessible, in the modern age. But there was something to be said for like, if you wanted to see like, you would look at the record jacket and that maybe there would be live shots of the guy playing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or the only time you could see him is like in a magazine or whatever. There was that kind of mystery element to it that was like, like made like all that kind of stuff worthwhile. Whether there was an article in a magazine on one of your heroes, or like or like the day the record was coming out or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I miss those days.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Anybody that's lived through them that misses them too, of course. You know what I mean? Now it's like like now you go on any kind of site, you could see a billion pictures of like anybody, live shots, whatever, studio shots. But it used to be like, oh, I wonder what guitar he's pictured with on the record. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff. You know?
They always change their image, so you're always. I wonder what Judas Priest is going to look like on this album.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So it was like, there was that element of mystery that that sadly, the younger generation does not, is not privileged to.
Yeah, I want to change that back to the old days. Okay, so you started playing guitar when you were about 13. Do you remember your first show? Or your first band?
Well, I was very fortunate. I was actually extremely fortunate when I was young. Like, I was playing for a while, and then I got hooked up with a band of guys, and we were playing like, these guys were like wired in, where we started playing. They were playing like every week and every weekend, because growing up in New York, the drinking age was 18. So I was in my first bar at like 15, and I started playing in bars at 15 and a half, 16. So I was with these guys, and I was playing like we would either play like like dances or proms or clubs or whatever. So all throughout high school, in my last 2 years of high school, I never had a straight job. All I used to do was like play. Like sometimes I play Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and at least a few nights a week. Like the whole time I was going to, at the very end of when I was in high school.
Wow.
So I was very fortunate as far as that goes. So I was doing that, and then I went to Berklee right out of high school, and played a lot of kind of when I was there, it was like primarily just a jazz school. So I was like, all right, I got to get with it and start. And I played like certain amounts of jazz and fusion. Of course, I played classical things too. But then I got like towards the end of when I was there, I got focused primarily back on, my roots of just playing hard rock. And since the early 80s, I've been playing nothing but hard rock and metal. And I remember reading the article on Yngwie in the Guitar Player magazine, Mike Varney's Spotlight column, and I was reading and I saw that he liked all the same guys that he loved Bach, which I did, and he loved Uli John Roth and Blackmore, which I did, and Al Di Meola. So I was like, this Swedish guy with the hard to pronounce name sounds like he'd be right up my alley. And then when the first Alcatraz record came out, I saw a small article on him, and I immediately, he became like one of my guys, and this is before, like, I even had the Rising Force record when it was like more of an import, before everybody really knew who Yngwie was, so he was somebody that I've been listening to since, I want to say 1983, when the first Steeler record came out. I remember like learning that solos off of that record, so he's somebody I've been listening to for like, you're talking about like well over 30 years.
That's right. Steeler and Alcatraz.
Yeah, the Steeler and Alcatraz records. I had those. I had the import version of the Rising Force record. Yeah, and it was a natural extension of all of the guys I loved, like Blackmore and Uli John Roth and that kind of thing.
Yeah, he really took it to another level, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he kind of, the guitar. He kind of took the guitar sensibility, a lot of the guitaristic stuff, and the vibe and the touch of Uli and Blackmore, and then and just kind of up the ante technically, severely, and that's how neoclassical, that the neoclassical shred thing starts with the early European guys, and and Yngwie is the guy that like put it all together. He is the link between like Uli, like all the European masters like Blackmore and Uli and Schenker, and what has become like the shred. You know what I mean? Yngwie is the guy. Like when I think of Yngwie, I don't think of him. Granted, to me, he's the founding father of the genre of shred, and of course neoclassical shred, or whatever anybody wants to refer to it as. But he's also he's also, to me, he's like a European guitar legend, like that's mentioned to me along with those guys. You know what I mean? Like he's not like just lumped in with the shred dudes. To me.
I've interviewed a bunch of shredders. I mean, I've interviewed Paul Gilbert, Marty Friedman, Tony McAlpine. I don't like that label, shred. What is shred?
I mean, I think shred is well, shred is playing the guitar. It doesn't. You could shred on the violin, or you could shred on, the bass or whatever. I've never heard it to, I mean, it's usually associated with a stringed instrument, but of course, most closely associated with guitar. I mean, shredding is playing extremely fast in an extremely technical fashion. Now, so to some people, that's like a negative connotation. Like, oh, he only shreds. You know what I mean? Like someone could use. I mean, it's just like, just like anybody uses any expression, depending on your inflection and how you use it. It could be like it could be good. Like, forget about it. You know what I mean? It could be good or it could be bad or whatever. So someone could say, one guy could say, it could be like some blues snob dude that, with no chops, that says, oh, all that guy does is shred. Or it could be like some guy that's like a like a guitar fanatic that loves fast guitar, and he goes, "Man, I saw that guy the other night and he shredded." You know what I mean? So right, it could be good, So depending on but just to say, I mean, granted, the blanket statement that people don't like about shredding is, that's all those guys do. They just play fast. They just play technical. There's no musicality. There's no sense of melodic, which is not true. Of course, like Yngwie, who is, the guy that pretty much invented shredding, let's say. I mean, his touch and his tone and his melodic sense are just as strong, if not stronger, than anybody that plays way less notes than him. Even more so. Just because you're at a high skill level doesn't mean you don't retain those other aspects of musicality.
Yeah, and I mean, throughout history, everybody's played fast. Yes, I mean, Beethoven had fast runs in his music, right?
Yes, Beethoven, Mozart, of course, Paganini, Vivaldi. Yes, speed is not, speed is not something that, I guess, like with anything, of course, like with shredding, you have people that, or any style of music, you have people that do it well and people that don't do it well. So of course, um, and people that aren't educated about specific genres, they're gonna, just paint it with like kind of a broad brush kind of thing, like anybody talking about anything, like I can't, there's so many subgenres of metal. Am I educated enough to make, I wouldn't make a blanket statement about some kind of subgenre of metal where I'm not familiar with the bands or the players. That's just ignorant.
Right. Yeah, there's always that argument from the purists who say, you know, Gilmour or B.B. King could say more with one note than Yngwie could say with 1,000, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's just a different thing. It's just a different taste. I mean, Yngwie's a great guitar player, just like B.B. King or David Gilmour is a great guitar player. Just because Yngwie plays a billion notes doesn't make him any less valid.
exactly. And I've been trying to tell this to people for ages. I mean, I'm a huge, like I said before, I can't do any kind of shredding. I'm an intermediate guitarist at best, but my God, I love listening to that.
Yeah,
It
I
just
mean,
blows my mind.
yeah. Well, fast guitar, even people that don't like it, secretly they secretly they really do. Like people want to, people want to, it's like, it's almost like, it's a bad analogy, but it's like a bad car accident. People don't want to look, but they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People don't want to listen, but it's like a guilty pleasure. Oh, they don't want to admit they really like it, but and the ones that don't, usually they're kind of like a little annoyed because it's like, well, I could never play like that. You know what I mean? So they get kind of, they have an attitude about it. You know what I mean? It's just it's just another aspect of guitar.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny. I was looking, you were talking about different styles of music, and yeah, today I looked up the 100 best shred guitar players. I can't remember the name of the website I checked out, but you know, there's so many different styles like Sean Lane and Alan Holdsworth, Frank Gambale. I mean, so many different styles of music can be considered shred. And by the way, on this list, you're number 19 on the all-time 100 best shred guitar players.
Hey, I'll take that. I would have been happy to be in the 100. If Alan, put it this way, if Sean Lane, Alan Holdsworth, and Frank Gambale are in the 100, and I'm like, I made it to the top 20. It's always nice.
You're only 5 spots behind Al Di Meola.
Well, that's pretty good. What's funny is Al talks just like I do. He's from Jersey City, so he's got the. You wouldn't think so, but because he's just jazz rock guitar icon, but he's got this very heavy East Coast accent.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I love Al Di Meola.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, I always like to ask that question to shredders to see, some people think that the word shred is a bad word, and I'm all for it. And
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, no,
I
no,
always
I,
ask.
I, I embrace it because I've used it on like so many of my album titles that you know what I mean. It became like a thing.
That's right, Night of the Living Shred.
Night of Living Shred, Supersonic Shred Machine, 2001 a Shred Odyssey. Yeah,
Midwest Shred Fest.
Midwest Shred. Yeah, so I just kind of, it's good to like embrace that thing because it doesn't give anybody any pretensions about what the record's supposed to be about.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, usually if an instrumental album is done by a guitar player, it's going to be a lot of shredding. That's fine. Everyone
Yeah,
knows that.
yeah.
So
I mean,
here's my question. You talked about Ole John Roth. You talked about Schenker, who I love. You talked about Blackmore. Who else? I mean, this list that I checked out had Badio as number one. It's got Paul Gilbert. It's got Buckethead. It's got Friedman, Rusty Cooley, Bumblefoot, Vinnie Moore. Who do you think are the top shredders
I mean,
aside
all
from
those
the ones you mentioned before?
I mean, all those guys are all iconic players. You know what I mean? And everybody brings like something different. You know, of course. You know, I mean, this like the list goes on and on and on. You know, and it all depends. Like, I mean, I can only like when I talk about like other players. I only talk about guys that who's playing. Not that all like there's tons of great players that I think are awesome and that I think kill, but they might not be guys that I listen to. You know what I mean?
Right.
I have like a core of like a ton of different guys I love to listen to, whether it's Wolf Hoffman from Accept or Andy LaRock from King Diamond or Hank Sherman. Or I tend to like the guys that play darker, more European, more eviler stuff than like the more happy major American style guys. But of course, there's like great, of course, there's tons and tons of great iconic players. I mean, whether it's John Petrucci or Jeff Loomis or you could just like or Jason Becker, you could just go on and on and on. Like there's tons of iconic guitar players, but I don't have as far as my favorites go. Of course, it's only and Kristen Pelletteri's like as far as me, the guys like outside of my core European guys, the guys that really influenced me in a fast guitar sense were Mike, Badio. Mikey, he's like one of the, like those, like Mike, like the first shred guitar instructional video was Mike Starlick's video, which like guys like whether it's myself or Michael Romeo or whatever, like that was like the iconic, like, first like shred guitar instructional material available to all of us. So Mike was somebody that I've always listened to, and I've been fortunate enough to play a bunch of shows with him, and hang with him a bit, and Kristen Pelleteri. Those are like my two favorite guys as far as like fast guitar goes, and of course all those other guys are all great and iconic.
Yeah, and Pelleteri on this list is number 4.
Yeah, Chris is great, and a super nice guy.
That's another thing that I wanted to talk to you about. What is it with you guitar players? Why is everybody so nice? I mean, everybody that I've talked to, from Paul Gilbert to Bumblefoot to you to, Dave Reffett, everyone is just so friendly. You get an image of these guys that they're kind of scary to talk to, but
Yeah. Well, you got to look badass in the picture. Like that's why, like people see press photos of me and they're like this guy must be. I'm like afraid to talk to him, and then I'm extremely and like people are like shaking sometimes when they meet me or whatever, and I'm like extremely, I'm just the way I am now, all the time, and like I'm always like fairly even keel all the time too. I don't know. I guess everybody must be very happy. I mean, guys, like if you're doing what you love and you feel very fortunate, and that's what makes you happy. So why not be good to people?
well, yeah, but a lot of people aren't.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, like what I always say is it doesn't matter. You could have a guy, he could be an awesome plumber, but he comes over your house to fix like the drain, and he's an asshole. You know what I mean? So it
Yeah,
could happen to just about anybody.
that's true. And I don't talk to many plumbers, so I wouldn't know.
Or it
But
could
yeah,
be the guy that works on your car, like could be anybody, like in any kind of biz, and they're like extremely skilled, but that doesn't give them the right to like be nasty to people.
well, yeah, exactly. And I have had some guitar players who weren't very nice to me when I was doing interviews, but it's always the hard rockers that seem to be the nicest guys to talk to. Anyway, that's just something
Yeah,
I
yeah,
picked up.
yeah. No. Well, that's kind of true. Like one thing, like guys would say, like you get like extreme death metal guys where guys got like tons of tats and they look like they look like they just did like like a decade in the joints or something like that, and like they're like the nicest guys or whatever, like the more extreme looking the dude, the nicer he is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk more about just you now. Um, you've been in a bunch of bands: Raven Lord, Holy Hell. What else have we got here? Reign of Terror. Um, what's going on with all these bands as opposed to just the solo
Uh,
career?
yeah, well, As far as like, well, the Reign of Terror, I kind of like, I wouldn't say I retired it, but I really haven't done anything with that in a while. But what one thing, I got, and my newest band project, and then I'll talk about the other bands in a sec.
Sure.
Is I got this band called Tower of Babel with all these European guys. Mark Cross plays drums, and he did a couple fill-ins for like the Scorpions and Halloween, and I think he did a stint with Firewind. Really good drummer. British guy, lives in Germany, and the singer is Chaba Svekin, who sings in Ravenlord, and he sings in Exorcism, and the keyboard player is Mysteria, who Mysteria is doing that Vivaldi metal project thing. He heads that up, and the bass player is this guy Nick Aguilera, who we did a stint with Glenn Hughes or whatever. So all the music is mine. It's kind of like similar to the Reign of Terror, but like a little bit more on the hard rock, like Rainbow, Deep Purple thing with a few Yngwie tinge things mixed in. So that's the next record I got coming out, and that's coming out early next year. And that's
Instrumental or
what's
vocal?
that?
With
Yeah,
just instrumental or vocals as well?
with vocals.
Okay.
Shabbos Sveckin's the singer, so he sings in Ravenlord, but on this he's doing much more of like a Dio thing, like a Jeff Scott Soto thing. In Ravenlord, the new Ravenlord record just came out. I didn't play any of the riffs; I just played the solos on it. But he does the full on kind of maybe like more of a Halford thing or a Udo Dirkschneider kind of thing, on that. But this he's like very, very Dio, very, like I said, Jeff Scott Soto kind of thing. So he's singing. It's a vocal record. It'll have all vocal tracks written by me, and he writes the lyrics, and it writes some of the melody lines. I write some, and and then there's a remake of Rainbow's Eyes of the World on it, which I'm a huge Blackmore fanatic, and it came out great. And also there's one instrumental on the record.
Oh, that's awesome. And you said early next year?
Early next year, probably February, March, it'll be out. Tower of Babel, and it's kind of cool because Tower of Babel, I wanted like some kind of rainbow tinged kind of title, for the band when I was coming up with the name for the band. And Tower of Babel is this very famous rainbow bootleg of like their rehearsals during the Dio Cozy Powell era.
Oh, cool.
And Holy Hell, like Holy Hell finished the second record. We had finished the second record. We were signed with Magic Circle Music, and then the band left Magic Circle, and there was some legal. There's been a bunch of back and forth legal stuff. I have nothing to do with it. I mean, I'm still good on good terms with everybody in both camps and everything. But now the band has new management, and on the verge of like a new label deal. So that's in the pipes for next year. And what happened? The old label Magic Circle owned the old masters, so we had to re-record the record. So we ended up doing that, and it came out killer. So hopefully that's gonna we'll be out doing damage next year with that thing. And as far like the Ravenlord, I just told you, and
Yep.
that's about it as far as like the other band projects. I mean, I have some stuff I do in the States too. Like I do a bunch of Blackmore tinge stuff. I got like one, I play live all the time. So I have one band called Black Knight's Castle where we do some of my Blackmore induced solo material, and we play all Rainbow and a couple Purple things. And then I also play in the Deep Purple tribute band too, so in addition to my solo thing and all these bands, I also got that thing going too.
Geez, man, take a break sometimes.
Yeah. So it's great. Like So yeah. Meaning next year I might have like I had the Ravenlord that just came out. So I'll have the Tower of Babel and the Holy Hell thing coming. At least two records coming out next year.
Man, oh man, you're a busy guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean a lot. Yeah. That's all I do is play guitar. So it beats working. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, life could be worse, eh?
Yeah, exactly, man.
Let's talk a little bit about your gear.
Oh, sure.
I know you use ESP.
yes. I'm a Strat guy, so granted, ESP is a great company, and I have many Fenders. I have like a bunch of older Fenders, like early '70s Strats, and a bunch of Yngwie and Blackmore models as well. But my main guitars are my ESPs, and I have a bunch of custom shop Strats and a bunch of off the rack ESP Strats that are all modded and stuff.
Yeah, pardon my ignorance here, but scalloped fretboards.
Yes.
What is the advantage? I know that you use them, Yngwie uses them. What is the advantage? I don't get it.
Oh, the advantage is that Richie Blackmore and both Uli, John Roth, and Richie Blackmore, were using them before Yngwie as well. And the advantage is since there's no wood under you, when you go to fret the note, since there's no wood under your hand, and the fret is scalloped out, it's much easier to get under the note for bending, vibrato, inflection, and that kind of stuff. So you could be a lot more expressive with the note, because the wood of the fretboard is not under your hand. So it's got absolutely nothing to do with playing fast. It's all about bending and vibrato and inflection,
That's
and
interesting.
control over the note and control over the pitch.
Is it much more difficult to play with
I
scallop?
I mean, there are different degrees of like meaning, like, say, Yngwie's early guitar, the Duck, the one that you see on the first Rising Force record,
Right.
he had a very shallow scallop to that, where like now his guitars are, so you could have different degrees where but it's not nearly. Some guys play my guitars and they're like, oh, this is cool, I really like it, or some guys are like, oh, this is kind of weird. So it is because you can be more expressive with the note. It is a little trickier to keep it in tune, but realistically, it's not. It's not like some big, massive kind of. It's like having a guitar with huge fret wire as opposed to smaller fret wire kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've always wondered about that. I've never really known what the difference is. That's
Yeah,
cool.
well, a lot of guys don't know. You know what I mean? Like I remember having a conversation on the phone with Michael Romeo one time, and he was asking me about it. He's like, so tons of guys like, well, what's the story with the scallop frets? Does it make you play faster? Because everybody, immediately when they think of the scallop fretboard, they think of Yngwie, of course, even though Blackmore was doing it back in the '70s. Um, but it's got nothing to do with playing fast.
Okay, that's cool. Now, what about effects? Are you a big effects guy?
I mean, I have like a bunch of stuff on the floor, like when I play live, I mean, I have some Boss stuff that I've had for years, whether it's a phase shifter or but live, like my main overdrive pedals are, like over the years, I've used the old gray DOD, wide, the old gray, DOD 250 overdrive, which is the original Yngwie overdrive box. But now I'm using the Fender Yngwie overdrive, which is a great box. I use that for the more balls out shred stuff. And I also um, use these there's a company from Germany called BSM, and they make these these treble boosters that are the guys who use Blackmore fanatics. So I use a couple BSM treble boosters as well for like the more Blackmore induced stuff. Like on my new record, like you hear the Black Knight Returns or Stratomaster or Tortured Soul. That's all the Blackmore style pedals, where the more balls out metal stuff, whether it's Hostile Takeover or the Dark Lords Allegro, that's more the Yngwie box. And then I get a phase shifter and a couple delays with some different ones. Got like more of a black. I got an MXR carbon copy that's got more of a Blackmore preset I use live, and the old Boss DD3 digital delay that's got more of an Yngwie multi-repeat thing. An octave box I use, just like the same one Boss octave box I used at the beginning of the Black Knight Returns, and it's a fairly, like, I'm old school, so it's all old Marshalls. I have like one of my main live Marshalls used to belong to Yngwie. It's an old 50 watts 1971, so it's got the Malmsteen Mojo.
Wow.
So yeah, amp wise for me, it's always there's only one. It's always Marshall.
That's the only way to go.
Yeah.
Now, is there a preference in strings? You know, I do this website, Korea Guitar, and I think a lot of people that check it out might not be as advanced as, you know, you guys. So is there a big difference in strings, and what kind of strings do you use, or what gauge do you use? What
Um,
works?
yeah, well, I mean, I use the same gauge. Years ago, I was reading an article with I used to play with a standard 9 set, and then I was reading an article with Yngwie, and he was using like a lighter top set and a heavier bottom, like 811. So I start, this is back like many years ago. I want to say, 20 something, early 90s. So that I switched to that to try it, and I loved it. So I use the same gauge he does, which is 8, 11, 14, 22, 32, 46, because you get a heavier tone for the riff stuff with like heavier wound strings, but, not with the top strings, because it's easier for like lots of bending and vibrato. So,
Eight? You're
yeah,
using eight?
I use an 8 on the top, and 8, 11, and my G's a 14. Yeah, and then Yngwie does the same thing. And Blackmore plays with that same kind of hybrid set, except Blackmore plays with a 10 on top. Blackmore's got like a 10, like something like a 10, 11, and 14 or something. You know what I mean? Blackmore plays with a 10 on top, but he plays with a very light B and G string, and he plays heavier strings on the bottom. So I kind of get that hybrid set thing from those guys, and I use Dean Markley strings. I have a hookup with them, and one of my favorite parts about them is they sound very good. They sound great, but they stretch very, very fast, and they stay in tune really good. After they stretch super fast, and they stay in tune really well. Sometimes like with various strings, you get a set, that put on, it takes a little bit to burn them in, but the Dean Markley strings, like you stretch them and like, they're rocking immediately, which is great. Oh, I mean, but of course, like everything factors into, even like the pick and like the string gauge, and it's got to do with the tension of the guitar. It's just like the tuning of the guitar. Like younger guys, whether they're using 7 strings, or whether they're playing in low tunings because they're playing more extreme metal stuff. I mean, the string gauge, the tension of the guitar, the gauge of like what kind of pick you use, all those things factor into the way you develop the sound in your hands.
Right. Interesting.
So you never too, like, you don't have to be super advanced to like pay attention to the detail of those types of things.
Right. Yeah, I always just thought using tens would be the best way to go, but what do I know?
Yeah, well, it all depends what's comfortable too. Like some guys don't like too light of a string gauge because they have like a heavier touch, so it's harder to keep like a lighter string in tune.
Yeah, for sure. Isn't that what Iommi used to do? He'd use real heavy strings because he was heavy hitter, wasn't he? Maybe.
I'm, I know, like, well, I know he, obviously, the only thing I know is I know he used to. No, I think he used to use lighter strings because of like, the plastic tips on his left hand, on his right hand. I'm sorry, he's lefty.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
yeah. I'm lefty as well. I just play righty, but
Seriously?
yeah, I do everything left-handed except play the guitar.
Has it always been like that? Like, have you always played right-handed with guitar? Or did you start with left?
No, I always played right-handed because when I was little, it was just like, okay, well, I never thought of it because you're kind of like you kind of like, kind of just starting out, so you're kind of no good either way. So like, why, well, the guitars are right-handed, so why not? I didn't even think of it. Yeah, Gary Moore was left-handed too.
I heard Jimmy Page was too.
Oh wow, yeah. So there's a lot of guys that are lefty and play righty, but I mean, I guess I don't know if there's any big advantage one way or the other. To be honest with you, as far as that kind of thing goes.
Left-handed, right-handed? I imagine it. From what I heard from Jimmy Page, it was all about money because left-handed guitars were so expensive back then
Yeah,
because there were so few of them.
yeah. Well, I would imagine. Yeah. See, I didn't even consider it. You know what I mean? Like, so I was like, okay, I'm just getting one of these regular ones.
Right. Like everybody else. Do you play seven strings?
No, no, I'm old school. I'm a Strat guy. I don't even like 24 frets. You
Oh,
know.
really?
Yeah, it's yeah, like ESP makes some great metal guitars, and I have like some 24 fret guitars, but I like, it's one thing playing it, like if I was just sitting and playing it, but if I'm actually doing a show and actually working with a guitar, I prefer it to be 21 or 22 frets. That, and like with 24 frets, the neck pickup sits further back, so I use the neck pickup. I do the Blackmore Yngwie thing where I'm switching back and forth. And the neck pickup doesn't have that same glassy kind of tone, because it's sitting further back on a 24 fret guitar.
Right. Huh.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
but
you are old school.
yeah, yeah. I got, for me, 6 strings and 21 to 22 frets. I managed to do plenty of damage, so I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, meaning, do I? It's not like I dog anybody. Like seven, I got like tons of guys that study with me at Berklee. Guys got sevens, guys got eights. It's good for guys to do their thing. And it's a different kind of approach to the instrument, because obviously, if you're playing a seven, the guitar's got a lot more tension, you know what I mean? So like the bending and the vibrato and the tension of the guitar and the string gauge and all that kind of thing is like a completely different animal. It's almost like playing a different instrument.
Yeah. There's just so much stuff happening in the guitar world these days. I'm a traditionalist, man. I'm sticking with my six strings and playing them badly.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be fun. That's what that's the thing. Like everybody get like a lot. Since I'm on the faculty at Berklee, a lot of the guys are very consumed with. Of course, everybody wants to get better. Everybody's consumed with self improvement. Everyone's very dedicated. But like I tell everybody, you don't want to. Get so you want to be concerned with those types of things, but you don't want to be so consumed that you take all the fun out of it, because that's why you got into it in the first place.
After all these years, is it still just as fun as it was back then?
Yes, yes. You know what I mean? Like I can honestly say that, I'm one of those guys that loves to play. Like I'm on the faculty at Berklee. So when I'm there, like working, I got a guitar in my hands anywhere between, at least 8 hours a day. And then on my off days, I'm still playing like, anywhere between like 4 and 6 hours and stuff, recording, playing, practicing, rehearsing, I'm like, I'm open 24/7.
Do you still practice or do you just write?
Oh yeah, I play all the time. Yeah, I love to play. I still practice. I still, sometimes I'll just play, and sometimes like, I'll kind of like, I have a pretty good medium between, because like one way to approach it is like if you think of like two guys, like say you think of Yngwie, right? Where Yngwie doesn't sit there with like, like and practice like some run over and over. You know what I mean? Yngwie just comes out and like just picks up his guitar and just starts going balls out and just starts playing stuff, and that's how he creates, and that's what he does. And then you have somebody that's much more, like say John Petrucci's like has a very disciplined approach to practicing, where he might have certain regimented kinds of things that he does. So I kind of like walk the line between the two to a certain extent.
Have you discovered any new techniques recently? Like after all these years, what are some of the newer things that you've discovered or learned?
No, like I don't really like most of my, I still play very technically, of course, but like as I get a little older, I tend to embrace like more of the old school like rock part of my playing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where like those are different things that like certain kind of. That's why I love Richie Blackmore. Certain kinds of phrasing ideas and note bending ideas and note choice things and different kinds of things like that. You know what I mean? And and I still like. I come up with various like there's a lot of new things that I did on the new record that I hadn't played before, like like getting technical or musically theoretical. I use the Hungarian minor scale quite a bit. And on my new record, I used it more than I ever have on any of my previous records. So it's not so much like some kind of new crazy technique, like a tapping thing or a whammy bar thing, or a string skipping thing. I do do variations of various things I do, but a lot of the things that really get me excited are more like badass old school rock stuff. Because I like to rock. I mean, all the fancy guitar stuff is great, but it's got to have attitude and it's got to have balls and it's got to rock. That's what I love about Blackmore. It's everything doesn't have to be. It's not about fancy lick number 67. It's about rock and balls.
That's cool that you keep playing as much as you do. So you're a teacher, you're a live performer, you record music, you write music. What gives you the most joy?
I like everything, you know what I mean, and I love to play live. Of course, when you play live, that's the best thing. But it's not like I like any aspect, whether I'm doing a clinic or whether I'm at work or whether I'm doing a master class or whatever. As long as the guitar's in my hands, I'm always happy.
Man, oh man, I wish I could have that kind of job.
Yeah, no. That's why I'm always in such a good mood all the time. People say, you know what I mean. That's why people ask me how I'm doing. I'm always good.
You got it made.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I can't complain, because that's one thing cool about doing the Berklee thing is I have the stability of a great guitar job plus, you know what I mean. I managed to tour, make records, and play live, and enjoy that aspect of my career. So I'm very fortunate and very appreciative.
By the way, I recently read an article with Steve Vai where he said he practiced about 16 hours a day back when he was trying to master the instrument. What was your practice time back then? Like, how did you get this mastery of the instrument?
I did practice like back in the day because I used to live next door to Steve Vai when we were at Berklee together.
Really?
Yeah, and that's like when everybody would go to like one of the things like the hardcore practicing dudes would do, and I would do this too. Is what you would do is like while because you lived in a dorm and you had roommates. So what you would do is like you would go in your closet. There was a big walk-in closet, and you would, and it was big enough, and you would grab like your chair, and you would sit and you would practice in the closet when your roommates were sleeping. So in addition to your 8 hours that you put in the practice rooms and stuff, then you'd go and pull another few late night hours in the closet. But everybody was like when I was at Berklee back then, it was a very extremely like if meaning like the attitude there was if you weren't extremely dedicated to music and your craft, then you should really go home because there's no place for you here. Now it's much more, you have people with different areas of interest, and of course you have like music production and all that, but back then like everybody was like like there were a lot of serious players there.
So that story about 16 hours a day is not a lie.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember. Well, I don't know if he practiced that much, but he practiced quite a bit. And so did I. I didn't practice to that extent, but that's when you practice at least 8-10 hours a day or whatever. Back then. But I did like most of the really good practice work and like really, made the most leaps in my playing. When I got out of there.
After that.
Yeah, after that.
Oh, interesting. So when was this in Vai's career?
Well, this is when this is like back when we, both of us were like 17 when we were there. So we went like right out of high school, so this is like, this is before, he was at Berklee a few semesters when he started to play with, and then started to play with Frank Zappa.
Okay. So just before Zappa.
Yeah, this is just before, he was a student there, and then, and then he was in close contact with, he actually used to talk to Frank Zappa's wife all the time on the phone. That's when you would have to make a phone call, you would have to go in the hallway to the payphone. If you wanted to call your mom, you wanted to call your family, from when you were living at the dorm, you would go to the payphone and so sometimes he would be in the payphone down the hall, talking to Mrs. Zappa.
Wow. Do you still keep in touch with him? Have you ever jammed with him?
No, no. I mean, we knew each other a bit back in the day, but and I never really, like sometimes I see, like guys that know me, like like will mention my name and he'll say something like, "Hey, tell him I said hi" or something. But you know what I mean? It's not like I'm going over his, I never kept in touch with him or know him at all, really. You know what I mean? But
Right.
of course, we would remember each other from back then. But it's not like I'm going over his house for lunch or anything.
Wow, that's interesting, man. That's cool.
Yeah, he's
So
from the.
there is a lot of time you have to put into to really be good at this. You
Yeah,
know,
well,
like
it's just like anything, you name anybody, you know what I mean? Like you name somebody that plays a sport, you know what I mean? Whether it's Michael Jordan or or Derek Jeter, no one's what when I'm from New York, so of course I love the Yankees. So it's not like anybody sees Derek Jeter taking a billion ground balls like during during like spring training or whatever, you know what I mean? And crafting like his signature jump move when he throws it from shortstop.
right. I think this is just something that, the majority of people who pick up a guitar just can't comprehend. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned to me that you sat there for 8 or 10 hours a day playing your guitar. My God, I, I couldn't even imagine
Oh
eight
yeah,
or
well,
ten hours.
well, that's one thing I tell it's certainly not for everybody. You know what I mean. That I remember like reading an article on Tom Morello was talking, and he was talking about like Randy Rhoads and Yngwie and guys like that, and he really he loved guitar and he loved that style of playing, but he really didn't want to it just wasn't in him to spend that kind of time practicing, and that's how he like started that whole kind of the crazy noises and the crazy kind of DJ action and the scratchy stuff with the whammy pedal and all that, and
Yeah.
that's how he started to find his niche because not the because he wasn't that kind of guy that wanted to play that many hours.
You did all right.
That's what I mean. It's certainly not for everybody, and then guys find different things they want to do with the instrument.
That's awesome. It's just, yeah, like I said before, it's just mind-boggling to me thinking of playing my guitar for 8 hours a day. I mean, I love my guitar and I love playing, but wow, that's dedication, dude.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I still, I'll like I said, I still play all the time now. I might play, at least, and especially between lessons and work, and then doing some practicing. It's a fairly continuous thing.
And how do you know, just out of curiosity, how do you know Dave?
Dave. Well, Dave was a student at Berkeley, and I didn't really have Dave very much as a student. He was in my like metal lab and stuff, and then and then we stayed friendly and stuff, and it's nice to see him doing well and everything.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, he's an awesome dude and a badass player as well.
Oh yeah, that album he put out is fantastic.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I did a couple guest things on it. Yeah, that I was very. He had a bunch of great guest guys on it and stuff, and and Dave's done some he does because he's on the staff at like Guitar World and stuff, so he's done some press stuff for me as well. So he's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, great guy. This was awesome, man.
Yes, yeah, yes. It was great to talk to you.
You too. And let's do it again sometime soon.
All right, great. Bye.
Take care.